The materials used are a knife, wicks and wick tabs, yellow and orange candle colorant or crayons, stearin, paraffin, a mold, a hot plate with a double boiler setup, and a wooden spoon. You'll want to use a ratio of 80% paraffin and 20% stearin. This will make your candles float. You can also use 100% paraffin, but then your candles will burn up very fast. Melt some paraffin and stearin in your double boiler. Use a yellow candle colorant or crayon to color your mixture, as our bottom layer will be yellow. Because we're making floating candles, we are not working upside down like we usually would. Let the mixture cool a bit before pouring it into the molds. This is our first layer. Wait until the layer is not liquid anymore but not yet hardened either, and place the wick. Be careful so that you don't puncture the bottom wax. Wait until the first layer is hardened, then melt more paraffin and stearin in your double boiler, and this time give it an orange color. Again, wait for it to cool a bit before pouring the second layer of color into the molds. When the second layer in the molds is hardened, melt some paraffin and stearin for our final layer. No need to color the mixture this time, because hardened it will turn white. Once everything is completely hardened, you can pop the candles out of the mold. The materials you'll need are leftover candles in 2 colors, 1 or more little containers, a mold, candle wick, scissors, tape, a thick needle, a stick, and of course your double boiler. I'll show you how to use a plastic container from pudding as a mold. Pull the wick through the needle, puncture the top of your mold, and pull the wick through. Now tie the wick to the stick and pull the wick tight. Secure the top part of the wick in place with tape and make sure to cover the hole you made. Now cut the wick. Melt the black candles and pour a little bit into your containers. No need to purify this wax as it's black anyway. When the black wax is hardened, pop it out of the containers and break it into pieces. Place the pieces into your mold. Now pour your melted orange wax into the mold. If you only plan on using the mold once, you don't have to let your wax cool. If you do want to reuse the mold, let the wax cool just a little bit before pouring it in. Wax shrinks as it cools, so you'll have to top up the bottom of your candle with more wax once it's hardened. When everything is completely hardened, get the candle out of the mold. Since I'm not going to use my mold again, I'm just cutting it open. You'll need a thin candle, ice cubes, a mold, and of course again, leftover candles, the double boiler setup, and a candle wick. Here I'm using a 2-piece candle mold. Clicking the pieces together is not enough as it will fall apart once you pour hot wax into it. Therefore, I'm using plasticine to cover the vulnerable parts. Place the thin candle inside and adjust the length. The reason we want to use this candle is because we're working with ice, and if we would just place a regular wick, it would get very wet and not burn well. While the wax is melting, I'm already getting some of my ice cubes out to let them melt a bit as they're rather big. Place the ice cubes into your mold while the melted wax is cooling a bit. Now pour the wax over the ice cubes and fill the mold. As the ice melts, holes will appear in the candle. You might want to put a towel or something underneath the mold as it will leave a puddle of water. Get the candle out of the mold and admire your ice candle. To make the bottom of the candle nice and flat, put some aluminum foil onto your hot plate and melt it a bit. The circular motion will help even it out. This is also a good moment to get rid of any rough edges on the candle. For this candle, I'm using a rubber plaster mold. You'll also need something wide enough to hold your mold, scissors, a stick, candle wick, tape, a thick needle, and a double boiler setup. I'm going to use leftover candles again and show you how to get rid of any impurities in the wax. For that, you'll also need another pot, a strainer, and some Kleenex. First, we're going to melt our wax. Then, pull one layer from the Kleenex and put inside the strainer. Pour your wax through the strainer and the Kleenex. Any impurities will now be in the Kleenex and your wax will look nice and clean. Repeat these steps until all your wax is purified. I also like to add extra stearin to the mixture to help the candle from coming out of the rubber mold. While the melted wax is cooling, put your candle wick through the needle, make a hole in the top of the mold, and pull the wick through. Tie the wick onto the stick and pull the wick tight. Secure the top part of the wick in place with tape. Hang the mold into the mold holder and pour your wax into the mold, but make sure your wax isn't too hot. Don't pour all the wax in one go because that can end disastrously with the tape coming off the mold and the hot wax just running through. First, pour in a little bit, check to see if the tape holds, and then carefully pour the rest in. Let harden. The wax will shrink, so fill that up and let harden further. When it's time to get the candle out of the mold, remove the tape and the stick. Carefully and slowly start rolling the mold. To make this easier and to prevent the mold from tearing, a good tip is to rub some dishwashing soap onto it, as it will soften the rubber. Take your time for this. You will see that it's not super easy, but you don't want to be hasty because then you will definitely break a part of your candle. It's definitely worth the effort though, don't you think? Again, use some tin foil to clean up the bottom and the edges. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Thank you for watching and happy Halloween!